You're not a kid anymore.
Oh, no, I go to
Shows.
Dad. I already know all this stuff.
Well, they don't teach you about everything.
At shows.
Okay, Mr. Smarty Pants? So just listen. When boys and girls get a little older, they start getting
Interested in punk and hardcore subgenres. Starter kit.
All right, I'm going to do my starter kit is all records that came out from LA bands between 77 and 78. Very specific era. This is the mask era we like to talk about on the show. The thing that is, gets kind of sort of wiped off the map by what I call 1.5. So this is what happens immediately before that. Hollywood centric scene. The Germs, they came out of West LA, Uni High. Pat Smear and Darby Crash, BFF. Pat Smear, you know him from, of course, Nirvana and Foo Fighters, but this is where he got his start. And Darby Crash, mythologized to no end because he committed suicide at such a young age. But their second single, Lexicon Devil, came out on Slash Records. It was the first thing that Slash Records ever put out, and it is a work of art. And I picked the song Lexicon Devil from it, and I really hope it's on Spotify. I did not check. There are two versions of the song. One is it was re-recorded the next year for their album GI, which is also incredible. But this is sort of where you first hear the brilliance of the Germs on a recorded medium. The very poetic lyrics. Darby Crash had a way with words. Great song. Kind of can't say enough about it. And then I'm going to move on to The Weirdos. Cliff Roman wrote this song in 1977. You'll hear all about it later. We Got the Neutron Bomb. This is from also from their second single, 1978, Danger House Records. We talk about this all the time on the show. This is one of the biggest sounding punk records ever recorded in an era where there weren't that many big sounding records. I'd say Nevermind the Bollocks is huge. That came out the year before that. But The Weirdos, one of the first LA punk bands, if not the first, definitely the first musically competent LA punk band. It took the Germs a while to get going. We Got the Neutron Bomb. We definitely have talked this to death. You all know it, you all love it, or at least you should by now. I'd say if you can't vibe with Lexicon Devil or We Got the Neutron Bomb, LA punk is not for you, and I would say probably punk as an entire genre of music is not for you. I think it would be fair to say. Moving on to the Bags. This was a band that was fronted by Alice Bagg. She grew up in East LA. They were more of a Hollywood-based band. Craig Lee's mom, he was a guitarist of the Bags, was famous for being a television producer. I think she produced MASH, or she directed MASH, which is, so you have real working class background with Alice, and then, silver spoon in mouth Hollywood industry family with Craig Lee, and then they combine to start one of the greatest punk bands ever from LA. I picked the song Survive. This is off their single Survive. B-side is Babylonian Gorgon, and this is also Danger House Records, 1978. Man, it's got this, I think we've talked about this on the show before. It's got this cool kind of like film noir, like finger snapping, standing under a street light with your, detective coat on kind of vibe. And then it just busts into hard, fast punk. Really interesting. And then it goes back to that whole sort of unusual intro.
Right. And the second time you're flipping a quarter underneath a lamppost.
Exactly. That's what we're going for here. There's really not much else like it. And I highly recommend Alice Bagg's autobiography, Violence Girl. It is a very interesting book. She had a rough upbringing, and she found solace in the LA punk scene. Moving on to, and I was going to pick a Dill song, and here's why I'm not picking it. Those guys are from Carlsbad, which is San Diego County, and then they moved to San Francisco. I thought at some point they had lived in LA, but since Cliff Roman can't remember, they probably were not living in LA because he would know. He has a photographic memory. So I'm not talking dills, although they do have 2 7-inches both on LA Punk labels. I'm going Screamers. Now, if we think that the Weirdos were sort of the coulda, shoulda, woulda if they had made an album in 1978, the Screamers are even a more extreme example of that. They never even made a record of any sort. They never made a single. They were selling out the whiskey, but they never made a record. I think they were ambitious and they thought they would make an art film instead, which never even got finished, and then they broke up. But they are now officially released on, at least on streaming. I think their records, there's vinyl that came out too. If you
I
look
bought
on
it on
Spotify,
vinyl, Ben. I bought it on vinyl within the last year.
well, there it is. On Spotify, this is under Screamers Demo Hollywood 1977. That's what it's listed. And the song is called Peer Pressure. And the interesting thing about the Screamers is that they did not have a guitarist and they did not have a bassist. They had a drummer, a very angry singer, and they had 2 keyboard players, one guy playing a Fender Rhodes and one guy playing something called an ARP Odyssey. And so you figure keyboards and drums, this is going to be whack. This isn't going to be hard. This isn't going to be the kind of punk rock I like. This shit is hard. This is angry ass punk music. It is No Cool Cough by or Cough Cool or whatever the fuck by the Misfits. This is raging punk music. So I have to throw them in here because they are one of the first, and also they are singular. There is no one else like them. They are not trying to sound like the Ramones or the Damned or whatever. If I had to guess, I'd say they were influenced by the band Suicide, although maybe they might have even recorded this thing before Suicide ever had a record out either. So, the last, but certainly not least, the Best Dressed Man, Daniel Sant's favorite LA punk band. Dan, what am I going to pick?
You've already, that's interesting because you've already picked 2 of the absolute greatest as far as I'm concerned. Give me a clue.
Their fans tend to be of a sort of black cat tattoo, fuzzy dice on the rear view mirror varietal.
You mean Zach's favorite band, Social Distortion?
No. Actually, X. I'm thinking an X.
Oh,
Yeah, because I was going Pennywise, dude.
So X, their first single comes out on Danger House in, I believe, 78. It is Adult Books. The B-side is We're Desperate. I'm picking the song We're Desperate. Both these songs get re-recorded on their second album, which comes out in the early 80s. But these are the OG versions. We're Desperate featured prominently in the documentary The Decline of Western Civilization. This is sort of like, John Doe and Exene Cervenka are the 2 lead singers of the band. They sort of trade off lead vocals and then join in together for the choruses. Really interesting. Exene, not a good singer. John Doe is a good singer. Their voices combined make something incredible. So it's kind of like the sum are greater than the parts. I hope I got that right. This is sort of like talking about their bohemian lifestyle. We can't pay the rent. We're about to get evicted. Our whole life is a wreck. We're desperate. Get used to it. It's sort of like kind of like this theme song for the Bohemian. But Billy Zoom is probably my dad's age, so he was around way before punk. He is the guitarist, and he is extremely competent. The X is always talked about as like they were the most musically proficient of all these bands because they were a little bit older than everybody and had experience well, I don't know if Exene was in any bands before X, but they were no spring chickens when it came to playing music, and they really did a cool thing by combining punk music with old school rock and roll music, rockabilly music. I know now you'd be like, oh, psychobilly, gross, but no, I'm not talking about all the shit that came after them. This is quintessential LA punk music. So to recap, Germs, Lexicon Devil, Weirdos, We Got the Neutron Bomb, Bags, Survive, Screamers, Peer Pressure, X, We're Desperate, and here are my honorables. I'm just going to name bands: The Skulls, The Dogs, The Controllers, The Dickies, Shock, The Eyes, The Plugs, The Alley Cats, and The Deadbeats. And if you want to get all this shit as easily as possible, Danger House Records has a singles box set. It's all on Spotify. It's on CD. It's on a 7-inch box set. And then there is a What Records compilation called What Stuff. And that is almost everything I mentioned. There's a few things maybe on Bomp that fall outside of that. But you have almost everything from this era, with the exception of the few bands that made records, made albums, which would be the Dickies and the Germs and the Plugs. So there you go. That's your mission. Listen to this shit.
Yeah, everything that's available on Spotify from Ben's starter kit, we'll put it on the playlist. Go to 185milessouth.com, click that playlist link at the top of the page, and check out the music we're talking about. We'll toss it on there with everything else we talk about on this podcast. Dan, we're kind of dialing in, it's basically all the stuff that came out before Nervous Breakdown, right? Do you have a favorite of all this stuff?
The Germs and the Weirdos are just top tier for me. I did enjoy Ben putting on a release that you basically had to have a time machine to go listen to until maybe like 6 months ago. The Screamers stuff. But it's nothing beats the absolute power of We Got the Neutron Bomb. Like, that's just a golden song in any generation, in any genre, but there's a lot of stuff that you mentioned in the rundown of other bands that are really good. Ben was kidding me because X has never sounded good to me, like, ever. I like John Doe in the film Lost Prophets with Ad Rock, but that's about it.
Yeah, X kind of missed me as well as Channel 3. Like, those are the two, like, classic old school bands from around there that they just never really connected with me. But I need to, all this music has merit, and really most stuff that makes it to album has merit. Like, people had to take the time to write songs, put it out, and so it has some merit. And I'm not trying to hate on the stuff. I just got to give it another try. And Ben made me a short X playlist a long time ago because I asked him to, and I'm a dick and I still haven't listened to it. So right after Husker Du, I'm getting into X. What's up?